Inshallah ta'ala, we will start the chapter that talks about the sins of the private parts. Now, we will mention here examples of sins of the private parts, and we will explain them so that they are understood. And among the sins of the private parts are az-zina, fornication, az-zina. Now, when we talk about the obligations of the guardian, what is the guardian to teach the child who reached the age of mental discrimination, reached 7 years of age, and this child is mumayyiz? And among these matters that the guardian is to teach this child is the matter of zina, and that it is unlawful. And some parents might think that, how do I explain this to my child? Do I explain it to this child who is at this age, or do I wait until later? Or, he will eventually, he or she, learn on their own. Well, the scholars said in this regard, yes, the guardian teaches that to this child and explains what it is. So, you tell this child that zina is haram. Okay, what is zina? You're telling the child zina is haram. What is zina? How does this child distinguish zina from just the unlawful kissing? So the scholars say, yes, you explain to them what zina exactly is so that it is understood and he or she can differentiate. And nowadays we're living in times, where so many things are taught in schools, good matters, and in some schools, bad matters. Social media platforms, there are so many types. And we as adults, sometimes and many times, we are astonished by what we are seeing. And sometimes we feel like this is so low. And how low can some people get? And that many children are seeing what we are seeing on social media. And we need to teach them right from wrong. If we don't do that, they might not learn and they might grow up thinking, this is okay. And what is also dangerous is that, unfortunately, in many Muslim societies, there are people with time who are picking up particular phrases from non-Muslims. And among these phrases that many non-Muslims nowadays say, and we hear in some of our communities, some people taking that phrase and using it as well, is the phrase that some say, who am I to judge? They say, who am I to judge? Leave them. They do what they want. They say, leave them, let them do what they want. Who am I to judge? They will be eventually judged by Allah. Well, yes, they will be judged. But we also mentioned that, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in a hadith, which means that if people left out forbidding the unlawful and it spreads, that Allah might send torture on them in this life. And we are seeing that nowadays. And when this unlawful matter is not being forbidden and it spreads. Look at what is happening with many societies nowadays. Look at how zina is spreading nowadays because some people say, let them. Who am I to judge them? They want to do this. They want to do what is deviant behavior with the same gender or without being married. They say, who am I to judge? Subhanallah. No, we are to abide by the rules of the religion and we are to forbid the unlawful when we can. And we are to advise when we think that this other person will listen. And of course, we need to teach what is right from what is wrong to our children. You know, we see around us so many children. Unfortunately, they do not know who their father is. They don't know. You know, this woman was with that man and that man. Who is the father? She doesn't know. And this child grows up, doesn't know who the father is. What kind of society are we living in? Subhanallah. So among the sins of the private parts are then fornication as zina. What is it? The scholars say it is the penetration of the entire glans of the penis in the vagina of other than one's wife or female slave. Okay? And this is an enormous sin, not to be taken lightly whatsoever. Subhanallah. And also among the sins of the private parts is sodomy. What is sodomy? It is the penetration of the glands of the penis into the anus of a man or a woman other than one's wife or female slave. Now, anal intercourse between spouses is, of course, forbidden, okay? Is, of course, forbidden. But the offense is not that which is here specific to the penalty mandated by the Islamic law for sodomy, okay? So a husband is not allowed to have intercourse with his wife from her anus. No, it is not allowed. But the scholars here differentiate because of the penalty here. So they differentiate in this matter. But as we said, it is not allowed to do. Now, what is the penalty? The penalty of willful fornication for the person who is muhsan, and I will explain inshallah who muhsan is. So the penalty of willful fornication for the muhsan 3 accountable person, whether male or female, is stoning with mid-sized stones until death. Okay, and we reiterate there is wisdom behind the rules of the religious judgments. There is wisdom behind these rules. The muhsan is anyone who had sexual intercourse with his or her spouse in a valid marriage. This person then is muhsan, who already had sexual intercourse in a valid marital relationship. Okay, this person then is muhsan. So this person who is muhsan, whether the male or female, if they commit zina, then what is the penalty? The penalty is what we said. This person would be stoned with mid-sized stones until this person dies. Okay, if this person is Muslim and they stone him, he's still Muslim. All right, the ruling is still that he is Muslim. But we are saying what is the penalty for committing this enormous sin. All right, it does not mean that this person is no longer a Muslim if they are Muslim. No, they're still a Muslim. At the time of the Prophet والسلام, there was a woman who committed zina, and she went to the Prophet والسلام, and she admitted that. Now, if a person commits that, what this person should do is definitely repent right away and does not say it, does not spread it. This person is to repent right away. Okay, but this woman went to the Prophet ﷺ and she admitted having done that act, committing zina. So the Prophet ﷺ, of course, then he has to apply the religious judgment in this matter. So they had her stoned. And while stoning, a person said something about her. The Prophet ﷺ stopped him because this woman had repented. So he is not to say that about her, She committed this sin and she repented and she was Muslim. So he was not to, say that about her. She repented, but still they were to apply the religious judgment. Okay? So if this person commits such an act, the person should repent right away and does not spread this later on. And if we know of a person who committed that, and we know that this person repented, we no longer, defame this person. We no longer say, he did this and this zina, or he such and such sin. When this person repented, we don't say that anymore about them. Okay, now, so we mentioned then the penalty of the one who commits zina and who was muhsan. However, for other fornicators who never had sexual intercourse in a valid marriage, in this case, if the fornicator was a free male or female non-muhsan, then it is an obligation to punish the offender with 100 lashes. With 100 lashes, okay? So they will not be stoned until death. Rather, this person will be punished with 100 lashes and 1 year, 1 lunar year in exile. The offender is banished for a distance which permits the traveler to shorten their prayer. As for the slave, because we mentioned the free person, as for the slave, if he or she commits this sin, they receive half of the free person's prescribed punishment. That is, they are punished with 50 lashes and banished for half of the lunar year. Also, among the sins of the private parts is bestiality. That is, to have sexual intercourse between people and animals, even if they are one's own property. The scholars mention cases, and these cases, might happen among some people. So the scholars mention these cases so that the judgment is known. You might wonder, do some people do that? We have heard many strange things. So the scholars mention these, so we know the judgment then, okay? Also, among the sins of the private parts is to masturbate. And this is by one's own hand or by the hand of other than a man's wife or female slave who is lawful to him. So then, masturbation by one's own hand is unlawful, it is sinful. And subhanAllah, many people nowadays are spreading what is opposite to that. And I have heard teachers in schools telling their students, claiming that this is, they say, what is the term? They said it is healthy. They claim that it is healthy for the child to do. In the religion, this is sinful. So we do not encourage children to do that. We do not encourage adolescent people to do that. And we do not encourage married or unmarried people to do that with their own hands. No, we are to follow the religious rulings. So we teach then that masturbation by using one's own hand, it is unlawful. Or using the hand of a person whom one is not permitted to have that with, it is unlawful. Okay, also among the sins of the private parts is to copulate during menstrual or postpartum bleeding, even if there is a physical barrier covering the penis, or to copulate after it has stopped, meaning the bleeding has stopped, but before the obligatory whole body wash, the ghusl, has been performed, or to copulate after the body wash was performed, but without having the proper intention or without fulfilling the requirements, the integrals of the obligatory wash, the ghusl. Okay, so then if the woman has her menses, her period, her menses bleeding, her husband cannot here have sexual intercourse with her. So first they would wait until the bleeding stops completely. Then she performs the obligatory whole body wash, the purgatory bath, al-ghusl. And of course, she fulfills the integrals of this ghusl. She has the proper intention. And then, of course, then her husband after that can have sexual intercourse with her again. Also, among the sins of the private parts is to uncover one's awrah in view of those who are prohibited from looking at it, or to uncover one's awrah while alone without a need to do so. Okay, so then we do not uncover the awrah in front of people who are not allowed to see it. And also, even if there's nobody around and we are alone at home, without a reason, we do not uncover our awrah. On the other hand, if it was done for a valid reason, such as to cool off, then it is permissible to uncover the awrah. Also, among the sins of the private parts is to face al-qibla or turn one's back to it while urinating or defecating without a barrier between one and the qibla, or when the barrier is more than 3 cubits away or less than 2/3 of a cubit high, unless it is in a place prepared for this, that is, a place prepared for urinating or defecating, like, the bathroom, the toilet. And among the sins of the private parts is to defecate or urinate on a grave, whether the grave was in a Muslim cemetery or was isolated elsewhere. A Muslim grave, whether it was in the Muslim cemetery or isolated somewhere else, we do not urinate or defecate on that Muslim grave. And among the sins of the private parts is to urinate in a mosque, even if done in a container, or to urinate on a revered object, on what is considered Islamically glorified. And it is prohibited to urinate in a, so when we said in a mosque, we are talking here, for example, even if in a container. We are not talking here if there is a toilet or a bathroom designated for that. And among the sins of the private parts is for an uncircumcised adult to neglect circumcision after being able to do so. Now, this is according to Imam al-Shafi'i. The scholars here had a difference in opinion. According to Imam al-Shafi'i, there is obligatory circumcision for the male and the female, and the scholars mention exactly how this is done. However, according to another scholar, it was said that it is not obligatory. Okay, so if we hear that a person, did not do that, a woman, for example, and they are taken in accordance to another scholar, then they are to do that if they want to follow the saying of another scholar in this regard. And Allah Ta'ala knows best.